state says the Dougco sheriff illegally used taxpayer money for union busting. Nonprofits helping survivors of violence face deep cuts in federal funding.
What do we cut from all these wonderful services that we've been able to provide?
Republicans in Alabama are confident Donald Trump is about to pull Space Command out of Colorado again. And businesses on Colfax brace for years of construction for new rapid bus lanes, worrying they won't make it until the promised help arrives.
The product's going to be great, but great for who? A whole new community on Colfax?
It's tonight on Next. The Douglas County Sheriff really doesn't want his deputies to unionize, so much so he illegally spent more than $100,000 of taxpayer money to try and convince the deputies not to do it. Here's Mark Salinger.
When the Douglas County Sheriff's Office found out its deputies were considering unionizing, it launched an all-out campaign trying to convince them not to. The sheriff posed for campaign posters in uniform. The county spent nearly $130,000 of taxpayer money on consultants to deliver anti-union messages, and deputies were told to attend mandatory meetings about why unionizing would hurt them. Now the Colorado Department of Labor says that was all illegal.
They wanted to engage in tactics that they knew were in violation of state law, and they just didn't care. And that's how blatant their actions were in this case.
Sean McCauley is general counsel for the Colorado Fraternal Order of Police. The FOP filed one of the first unfair labor practice complaints in the state against the Douglas County Sheriff's Office in Douglas County under a newly enacted collective bargaining law passed in 2023.
It's going to have effect not only in Douglas County, but it's a message to other sheriffs statewide that this type of conduct is not going to be tolerated by the Department of Labor, and they're going to do something about it.
Douglas County has already appealed the decision, saying it did nothing wrong fighting against unionization. Sheriff Darren Wheatley told us today he simply shared accurate information so they could make an informed decision. The Department of Labor describes the meetings as, quote, mandatory and coercive and threatening in nature.
They use county funds to fund this process to work against their own employees.
The investigation found the county used their $130,000 consultants to hold captive audience meetings that threaten reprisals against any county employee for forming a union. Today, the county told me they were simply educating employees. The ruling says the sheriff's office has to stop all unfair labor practices and post notices around the department telling employees of their rights. The union still hasn't held that election yet and plans to next spring, Kyle.
Mark, you said this challenge was one of the first of its kind.
Yeah, exactly. This new law basically gave county employees the ability to unionize in Colorado. The sheriff's office had previously filed a lawsuit trying to make the sheriff's office immune from this law.
All right, we'll keep following it. Mark Salinger, thank you. One of the most powerful Democrats at the Colorado State Capitol is playing quite a game with voters right now. State Senator Chris Hansen was reelected last week amid swirling rumors that he's just going to resign and leave town to take a CEO job with an electric co-op in Durango. Today, Hansen confirmed he is taking that job in Southwest Colorado, but the senator still won't say if he's resigning. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger broke that story here yesterday based on what, Marshall? A dozen sources in and around the Capitol who all say they've been told Hansen is leaving, but the senator just won't tell the 75,000 people who voted for him.
Not yet, at least. In an announcement today, Hansen said he's the new CEO of La Plata Electric Association, but said nothing about plans to resign. More on his statement in a moment. Here's where the state capitol is, and where Hansen represents, you have to live in the district you represent. That goes from like Lowry downtown into Wash Park. And you can see down here is La Plata Electric's home base in Durango. They've also got an office over here in Pagosa Springs. Hard to see how you do both. We have an archive job posting I found for the La Plata Electric Association CEO. It pays $400,000 to $600,000. The listing said to apply by July 12th. A question we would like answered, did Hansen apply for the job by that date? And when did Hansen find out he would be CEO? Questions voters might like to know, too. The previous La Plata CEO, who left in February, earned $544,000 last year. Hansen's current state Senate term that ends January 7th earned him $41,449 a year. His new four-year term, which is supposed to start January 8th, sees the salary go up to $47,561. Here's that statement I talked about today. Hansen said several things before getting to the very bottom here. Over the coming weeks, I remain committed to serving my constituents and districts, and I will be working through the details of the remainder of my time in the Senate. I tried to follow up with him to try to confirm if he's planning on being CEO and state senator for the 2025-26 legislature. No response yet.
What's to be gained by delaying it, other than maybe leaning on the scale to make sure that your hand-picked man or woman gets the seat after you?
The vacancy committee, just kind of what you talked about. The timing also matters, because if he were somehow to resign before the term ends, then the vacancy committee would have to pick some lame duck replacement for like the last month of the year here versus just replacing him fresh starting on January 8th when the legislature starts. But I think it really is just getting the vacancy committee in order. I don't know, other than to say it on his own terms rather than journalists asking about it.
Now, just a reminder, when some politicians leave town, they wave with all 5 fingers, and some just use one. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Supporters and skeptics of President-elect Donald Trump's plan to deport as many as 20 million people, starting in Aurora, Colorado, are starting to acknowledge the limits of that campaign promise. Trump has said that he will use local police as the main deportation force. That would be illegal under Colorado law. His pick for border czar, Trump's former acting head of ICE, Tom Homan, has acknowledged that Democrat-led cities are unlikely to help, and that's forcing the feds to act with their limited number of immigration agents.
If we can't get assistance from New York City, and we may have to double the number of agents we send to New York City, because we're going to do the job. We're going to do the job without you or with you.
It's not just the potential of unwilling local law enforcement and a limited number of federal immigration agents that could slow or stop Trump's mass deportation. Former acting head of ICE John Sandwake, who served in the Obama administration, said that Trump's plan to deport migrants who have committed crimes first is only going to impact so many people, and that in order to quickly rack up millions of deportations, Trump would likely have to start deporting migrants who have not committed crimes, or just scare people into self-deporting.
There are not large swaths of criminal, undocumented immigrants operating in this country. To get those individuals, though, for ICE is very tedious work. It takes a lot of manpower. It takes undercover operations, traditional law enforcement tactics. The point is, it results in a very low number of arrests, but of a higher quality. And unfortunately, that's not the approach the administration has said, the incoming administration said they're going to take. They're going for mass deportations, which means the lower hanging fruit of the immigration system, the population that's been here a long time, the parents of the 4.4 million U.S. citizens who have an undocumented parent. That's who's going to be, by and large, targeted when you're talking the numbers they're talking about.
Trump himself has offered wildly varying estimates on how many people he wants to remove from the U.S., sometimes saying it's more than 20 million people. He suggested using the local police, the National Guard, and the military in that order. Well, you notice how all the unsupported claims of election fraud just kind of disappeared when Donald Trump won? Well, almost all of them. You got to hand it to the Colorado Republican Party for being consistent, because they are still trying to keep the 2024 election from being certified. On a GOP call last night, leaders called on local canvass boards to refuse to certify the recent election. They tried the same thing last year, and the election was still certified in every Colorado county. The Colorado GOP is also distributing criminal affidavits to members across the state, asking those members to send them in to their local district attorneys. The GOP wants more investigations into Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold's office for inadvertently posting voting system passwords online for months. Griswold's team only began changing those passwords and even telling county clerks once that breach was made public by the Colorado GOP. At this point, Republican district attorneys have been deferring to Denver's Democratic DA as the lead on this breach investigation. Colorado GOP says it's also working on a federal lawsuit against Griswold. A significant cut in federal funding is making it harder for domestic violence and sexual assault survivors to find the help that they need. In 6 years' time, Colorado's share of that funding has been reduced by $43 million. Our Angela McCall looks at the impact.
Across the state, tough decisions victim services organizations don't want to make.
And we're seeing the strain already on how that's landing for survivors who are calling and asking for help.
Ana Martinez works at the Blue Bench that's seen a reduction in federal funds called VOCA funds. This year, it's a 35% cut.
On my team, it's devastating.
Without the money, a team of 6 therapists will go down to 1. Ultimately, Blue Bench will have to turn away clients, and those they do accept will see limited services.
And we're now having to limit to only seeing clients who are uninsured, because we were looking at, who and what can we see in the community? Who can we refer to now that they can't come here?
The state distributes those federal dollars to organizations like the Blue Bench, but the state is receiving less to distribute.
The ultimate impact is to all of the victims that they're trying to serve, and there's just going to be less help available and less resources to do that.
Kelly Kistner with the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice says her office distributed $56 million in VOCA funds in 2018. For next year, that number drops to $13 million.
The real impact is always to the victims who need those direct services so much after their victimization, and everybody just having to have a new strategy about how to do and try and stabilize with less money. But I think it's just going to be really rough for a while.
The Blue Bench worries what comes next for survivors who come to them, that they won't have the resources to help.
We know that after a trauma, it's really hard to ask for help to begin with. So having to be told, actually, we don't have anything, but here's someone else you can reach out to, might be enough for someone to not even follow through. So we are acknowledging that it's not an ideal solution. It's not an ideal situation.
The Division of Criminal Justice says it's partnered with state coalitions, the governor, and the legislature to fill gaps after decreased federal funding over the past several years. Advocates hope Prop KK, which voters passed just last week, will help next year. It will provide money for victim services thanks to a new 6.5% excise tax that manufacturers and gun sellers will have to pay on guns and ammo. That money, though, won't start being collected until April. So, there's still some time to go, perhaps a year or two, Kyle, until we see some relief.
And because this is widespread, it's not just one organization who can look for help. They're all looking for help in the same spaces at once.
In fact, there's over 200 organizations that receive this funding. And so, yes, an incredible impact when you think of 200 organizations, and then the many hundreds more that they serve.
Angeline, thank you. Donald Trump's return to the White House means the tug-of-war over Space Command in Colorado likely continues. And transforming one of our most iconic streets will take years. Just a few months in, some businesses say they already feel pushed out. That's next. UC Health has agreed to pay $23 million to settle a Justice Department investigation into allegations that hospital system artificially inflated bills for Medicare patients. The DOJ claims UC Health was automatically using higher cost codes for Medicare and TRICARE patients in the ER. There are set billing codes for those patients based on which hospital resources are used during their visits. A whistleblower claimed that between 2017 and 2021, UC Health was automatically coding some emergency room visits at the highest level, regardless of how long patients were there and which resources they needed. UC Health denies the allegations. Spokesperson says they agreed to the $23 million settlement to avoid a more expensive legal process. The whistleblower in this case, a former UC Health coding specialist, gets nearly $4 million of that settlement. The Republican who leads the House Armed Services Committee is calling for President-elect Donald Trump to pull Space Command out of Colorado Springs again and put it in Alabama. This has been a back-and-forth battle for years. Space Command was temporarily headquartered in Colorado when it was created in 2019. In the final days of the Trump presidency, he announced it should be moved to Huntsville, Alabama. In 2023, President Joe Biden deferred to Space Command leadership, who asked that it stay in the Springs. Both the Springs and Huntsville have long histories with the U.S. military. Republican Congressman Mike Rogers of Alabama says he expects that Trump will pull Space Command out of Colorado immediately.
I've told y'all since Biden made that crooked decision it wasn't going to work. As you know, in the Armed Services Committee, I put a hold on any money being spent in Colorado Springs after the President Biden came in and stole that mission away. And I told everybody then that Colorado Springs will not be the future capital of space, location of Space Command. It will be Huntsville, Alabama, who won it fair and square.
Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper from Colorado pushed back on that, saying, quote, Alabama couldn't win this fight on the merits, so they're trying to get Trump to overrule our national security and cost taxpayers an enormous amount for the sake of a hometown win. Let's bring in meteorologist Kathy Sabin for a look ahead at the weather.
Kyle, it was sunny and comfortable today, and now we're tracking a fast-moving storm that's bringing mountain snow, wind, and isolated showers to the Front Range tonight. This system is in and out tomorrow, so you'll have sunshine back in the forecast, but certainly cooler this afternoon. Gusty winds out of the west and northwest, really kind of cutting some of that moisture, not allowing a lot of it to make it onto the ground. But those gusty winds in the mountains mean some areas of blowing snow. So think about that if you're headed up I-70 over the next few hours, where winter weather and travel advisories are posted for 4 to 8 inches of snow. That advisory out through 5 a.m. tomorrow. System rolls in and out, and yeah, you may see a little bit of a rain or snow shower out there over the next 2 hours. Skies clear. You wake up to sunshine tomorrow. We got a nice looking day coming up. So sunshine and low 50s Wednesday, close to 60 Thursday, good looking day Friday. Love the weekend. Broncos in town. Next storm and chance for snow Monday night into Tuesday.
And I've maxed out all my cards. And I'm not the only one seeing it.
Businesses along East Colfax are bracing for years of construction at their doorstep, and some say they are already struggling. Colfax is being transformed. Businesses along Colorado's most famous street just want to survive to see the end result. Our photojournalist Amy Hunter caught up with business owners already feeling the impact of the city's bus rapid transit construction.
For the next couple of years, these sounds are here to stay along East Colfax.
I've been here 7 years.
For Jimmy Shores, it's the sounds of his tattoo shop struggling.
It's cut our business in half. Like, people aren't using Colfax corridors much anymore. They know there's construction here. They know you're gonna get dwindled down to one lane, going both ways. It's gonna take an hour to get through. It's almost impossible to cover all my bills every month. And I've maxed out all my cards. And I'm not the only one seeing it.
The construction is part of the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project. It aims to reduce travel time and provide more reliable access to businesses. But with completion not scheduled till 2027, some owners aren't sure they'll make it to the end.
The product's gonna be great, but great for who? A whole new community on Colfax that's not the people that built it? Who's it gonna be great for? Not the people that live here, that work here, that have businesses here, because we might not survive.
The city is offering grants to help affected businesses, but applications don't open till early next year.
So it may be released in January. When are you gonna get it by? May? And by then, more businesses are gonna be out of business. More people will have suffered.
Jimmy is excited to hear the sound of growth.
And I wanna see the BRT, the new program running down the Colfax. I think it'll be cool.
But is afraid that without more immediate help, the cost might be too high.
Could use a hug from the mayor or something, you know, like, or the governor, come through and let us know we're gonna be okay, because I don't see it, and neither do my people in the community collective, and that's something that...
For next,
it's as scary as when we had the pandemic.
I'm Amy Hunter.
Colfax Business Association and the Upper Colfax Community Foundation are working on a couple of different efforts to boost businesses, including trying to raise money for emergency microgrants as part of Colorado Gives Day. We are back with your feedback next. Thank you. My goodness, the feedback coming in by text tonight. That's 303-871-1491 to text next. When you reference statistics, please give us a percentage as opposed to a number. For instance, 45 million out of 50 million, or, and so forth. That's very, very fair. We should be doing that whenever possible. Another text, what was the result of the vote into the meat processing facility in Denver? That was rejected. The meat processing facility can stay. And Melody says, we watch you every chance we get. Love the updates, the politics, the local Denver news. We do not like the white coat. Just saying. I know that it's white. It's more of like a sand or a beige or an eggshell or cream.